always a pleasure to be back here on the Rising India stage with three very eminent speakers here who have many achievements to their credit. Abhinav Bindra, of course, needs no introduction. Aparna Popat has taken India to the global stage as well, and Deepthi Bopaiah is hoping to take many more athletes from India and make them global stars. So Abhinav, Deepthi and Aparna, many thanks for joining us here this evening. You know, when we were introducing you, Abhinav, the fact of the matter is that there are only two individual goals that India still has. So is it a bittersweet moment for you when you're introduced as one of India's only two Olympic goals?
I'm going to evade and dodge this question. This panel has no gender equity here, so why don't you direct, it's ladies first, so please direct your first question to the eminent ladies on the panel, please. Because it's a tough question to answer.
I thought you were a shooter. You're playing football. This is a pass that you're making at the start. At the start already, a Pele pass. You've changed. You've changed. Okay, fine. We're going to go to Aparna then. Aparna, let me start by asking you, as I was pointing out, a bittersweet moment there when we talk about what we've been able to achieve as far as our sporting aspirations and our sporting ambitions are concerned. As someone who has been in sport and someone who is now looking at sport from a different lens, what do you believe is broken? What do you believe we need to fix?
Well, I think, thinking back from my days to now, a lot has changed in sport, and kudos to, what India has managed to put together, whether you look at policies, whether you look at schemes, whether you look at the budget that has tripled in the last decade or so. You look at things like infrastructure, you look at the academies that have come up, and a lot of it, I thought, at least at my time, would never have been possible. But we've got our act together there, right?
I want to interrupt you there because this is an interesting anecdote, because Aparna and I were chatting and she said that she had made a checklist after the 2012 games, that, what is it that India must do and what was it that India has been able to achieve, and on that checklist, where do we stand today?
Well, I think everything has been checked off that list.
Really?
Which means we've managed to put whatever we thought at that point together. So I think we are right there with the macro sort of view of sport. We've put in the big bricks in place, and I feel now is the time to look at more micro. And if we do that, I'm sure, since now we have a sort of a structure and an understanding of sport, and there are a lot of great minds that have come together to put this together, right? With, of course, support from the government and, corporates and the CSR activities that are happening. I think we just need to get the micro pieces in order, and we will be able to shine.
So I'll get to what the micro fixes are that you believe we need to prioritize. But Deepthi, I want to talk to you. Aparna saying that, look, a lot of distance has been covered, not to say that there isn't a long journey to be made. But when we're talking about India's Olympic aspirations, we're talking about 2036. I was having a conversation with Vijay Amritraj here on this stage yesterday, and his point was, great, we must aspire to host the Olympics, but we must also aspire to break into the top 5. We're 71 as of today. How do we get even remotely close to that aspiration of being top 20, top 10, top 5?
It's interesting that Aparna has laid out this 2012 vision to where we are now. And if you look at 2036, we're not too far away.
No.
We should have started work already. But when you look at the number of events that India actually participates in at the Olympics or the Paralympics, out of the 33, 34 events, we participate only in 14 or 15. So we are expecting medals from the few events that we participate, and events like athletics, cycling, fencing, which have so many medals at stake, we don't even send people into those events. So I think if we want to host the Olympics, we have to look at the events that we're good at, the sports we're good at, and go really deep into it, into the grassroots. We were talking sometime earlier about, it's not our current set of athletes, it's much younger athletes who we need to be working on, and what are those events that we're looking at.
So to the point that Abhinav was making before we came on to stage, that for 2036, we've got to find the 8-year-olds and the 10-year-olds. How do we find the 8-year-olds and the 10-year-olds? Is the system that we have today geared up to finding the 8-year-olds and the 10-year-olds who are going to be competing in 2036? Do we have a system problem, or is the system functioning?
I think our system currently is focusing on the elite, on the top. It was important for India to show that it's possible. I think Abhinav did that beautifully when we believe that we cannot win an individual gold medal. I think he showed that it's possible. And I think for all different countries, you need to show that there is hope. So when you look at elite athletes, you have to show that it's possible. And I think we've built that model really well, where you have a few role models in many sports that we talk about. But now when you look and go deeper into each of those sports, you don't have the middle or the junior athletes. So I think now we need to flip our model a little bit. While we focus on our elite, also keep going down the pyramid and focus on the ladder, and also most importantly show that sport doesn't sit out of our general world. The athletes are going to come from people who just move and have physical activity, and then elite sport happens. It's not going to just come out of somewhere, some talented athletes.
Yes, it doesn't operate in a vacuum. It has to be part of culture. It has to be part of the mindset. Now, are you going to take the question?
We'll try.
Okay. So, Abhinav, to the point that was made there by Aparna, that we've got the building blocks perhaps more or less in place, that now we need to fix the micros. To Deepthi's point, that look, the system needs to start to identify the missing middle. And that's not just the case as far as the sports business is concerned. I think the missing middle is a story for a lot of sectors in India, whether it's SMEs and so on and so forth. How do we fix the missing middle? How do we find the missing middle? And on the micro issue, what do you believe we need to prioritize today?
I think we have to start looking at sport a little bit differently. I think so far we've looked at the role of sport from a very narrow perspective. Our relationship as a society with sport has been pretty transactional in nature.
You win a medal, we celebrate you, and then we forget it.
We support athletes, and athletes win. I think as a country, I'm not quite sure if we love sport as of today.
Cricket?
No, wait a minute.
But with the exception of cricket.
1 minute. Patience.
Yes, sir.
I think we are in love with winning in sport. Okay? But we have to truly fall in love with sport. And how do we do that? We do that, in my perspective, by starting to look at sport from a much larger lens on how sport can truly contribute meaningfully in nation building. How can sports' role be powerful in making
Viksit
Bharat?
Yeah.
So from a health perspective, let me start with that.
Yeah.
I mean, physical inactivity in India is at an all-time high. I think there's data, WHO data, to show that there are 200 million Indians who are physically completely inactive. So physical inactivity has to be, it's the role of sport to alleviate that and to get young India just simply moving, to make India a healthier country, not just physically, but also mentally. And the role that sport can truly play to make our society healthy is a massive role to play. The health of the nation has a direct impact on the economy of this country. We are aspiring to be a global workforce. If we are not a healthy workforce, productivity levels are going to be severely affected.
No, and the out-of-pocket expenses. Indians spend money on healthcare. It's out-of-pocket expense.
Physical inactivity is already giving a massive rise to non-communicable diseases. So let us see how do we integrate sport into making India truly healthy, physically and mentally.
But
one aspect of it.
But how do you get people to fall in love with the idea of sport and not the idea of winning? Because, and we're in the media also guilty of that. The emphasis is on the medals, the emphasis is on the winners, the emphasis on who's standing at the podium. How do we create a culture of falling in love with sport?
We have to mainstream policy in sport across the board. So I started with health. Education. I think the role of sport in education is massive to build a culture of sport. But also, education is a space which is going to be disrupted massively in the years to come. Artificial intelligence is going to play a massive role, already starting to play. But what AI will never be able to do is imbibe values in young people.
Yeah.
What is the role of sport? What young people learn on the field of play? It gives the most valuable life lessons that will be needed for Indians to thrive and be successful in different aspects of life. So the role of sport in education is massive. So policy in education, sport has to be mainstream. You know, we are in a stage in this country where there's massive work happening on urban development and infrastructure development across the country. How do we integrate community-level sports development in that aspect? So mainstream sport in that. Women's empowerment, the role of women in sport. Sport can play a massive role in making girls more confident.
Yes.
Data shows, when girls play sport, when they are physically active, they're just more confident. And that is going to help not just make athletes, but just very successful women. So sport has to be mainstream. And when that starts to happen, I really feel that there will be much, much more momentum across the board in sport. So far, sport has developed in India in kind of silos.
Silos, yeah.
And it is a complicated, to be very honest, it is a complex subject. Sport is also a state subject.
Yeah.
So a lot of grassroots sport development really depends on the role what states play and the respective states play in that. But when we start to really look at sport from all these aspects, we will increase the playing population of this country. We do say that we are a 1.4 billion population, but do we really know what is the playing population of this country? We need more people to just embrace sport, not to win in sport, but just to purely enjoy sport, to become healthier, to become happier, and to imbibe those wonderful values that sport brings. And when that starts to happen, I truly believe
the medals will
become a byproduct of this whole thing.
Absolutely. That will become the natural outcome if we do embrace sport in all its glory. And as you talked about, we'll talk about the values program that the Olympics, and you've brought that to India in just a second. But Aparna, I know you believe that, like Abhinav, that sport is a metaphor for life. To take this point forward about, as a culture, as a society, as an economy, as a country embracing sport, let's now address the micros. What are the micro level interventions that are required today to enable this embracing of sport?
Yeah, I think just to take off from what Abhinav said, right, the culture of sport, and I believe that what is a culture of sport? What is a sporting culture, right? It's how we view and how we engage with sport. And while a lot of people understand that sport is good for you, and I believe there are two things that we need to get right if we want people to actually get into a sporting culture. One is the experiences they have in sport. So now I want to come into sport, I'm really interested, but when I come in, things are not as per, the ground's not good, or there's no coach available, or there's no... So while I want to, but I don't have the access and I don't have a good experience, I'm not going to stick with it because there are plenty of other options that I have to, put my time into.
Fair enough.
And the second thing is how you dominate the sport. And that is the high performance part of it. When we see champions, from India, there's a certain kind of motivation and there's a certain kind of energy that you feel towards sport, which makes you or draws you to sport. And I think both are equally important to put into place. Speaking of the micros, and I'll speak of the high performance part of it. Now, we look at high performance, when you talk about a high performance athlete, it's a journey from the age of 8 or 10 that you start off, and you probably play the Olympics, when you're 18 or 20 or 22. And there's a pathway that you have to follow, and there are different blocks in that pathway. And those blocks have to be strengthened and become world class. Because if you take a very talented 10-year-old or 12-year-old and you put them into the system, but when they reach 16, when the sports science is not available to them, when the funding to go and play tournaments is not available to them, all your effort of those 6-8 years is gone to waste. Right? So now that we know that we have an athletes, now we have an infrastructure, can we get deeper into it? Can we bring in more expertise? Can we fix these blocks so that not only will we have a pathway for these athletes, we'll also be not sorting only for talent, we'll be sorting for the system as well. And what that will also do is actually give us roadmaps That today, if we have played, say, the 2024 Olympics, I have a roadmap for the potential of 2028 when they go in, that they have some learnings to carry through.
Right.
So it translates, and you actually make better use of the, look, funding will always be limited. Just because we're such a big country, there's so many sports that we have to play catch up on. But what I
And the
would start with,
disproportionate amount of money gets spent on cricket, so
let it. If they are dominating the sport, and if they have shown, the IPL, for example, it is an industry in itself. They've made it. Let it be.
yeah.
Can we learn from it? Can we get anywhere close to it? Can we make properties? We do, right? We have the IPL, we have the Mumbai Marathon. They've just completed the 20th year of the Mumbai Marathon. Can we do it? Yes, we can do it. We need the continuity. We need to build that legacy. And for starters, I think the sports that we are good at, like Deepthi mentioned, and she's absolutely right, we don't participate in all the Olympic sports. So you can't expect our medal tally to, you know, multiple.
Yeah.
But the sports like shooting, sports like wrestling, where we're traditionally very strong,
We should be dominating
We
those.
should be dominating those.
Yeah.
So at least fix those, guarantee your, double-digit number medals. And as we do that, simultaneously go and, build for more.
Yeah, Abhinav, you wanted to come in. Yeah.
Just to expand on Aparna's point, I think she made a very important point.
You'll have to hold the microphone up.
On the experience young people have with sport. And there I would like to talk about their first experience of sport normally happens in a school, and the role of PE teachers in schools. Unfortunately, the PE teacher in our school system, unfortunately, in the hierarchy of a school system, the PE teacher is really at the lowest ebb. Just compare that, go to the United States, which predominates the Olympic medal tally, number one probably. Who's the most popular person in a school there or in a college there?
The PE
sports
teacher. Yeah.
So we need to change that, because that is the first experience a young person has in sport, and that role that PE teacher plays is massive and has a great consequence on what happens years down the road.
And builds that pathway that Aparna was talking about pretty much from the start of somebody even aspiring to get into sport, whether or not they eventually do.